Can everybody hear me okay? Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Brody, and as John said, I'm a trucking and transportation attorney with the law firm Saxton and Stump. We are based out of right here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We are a full-service law firm that services almost all of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. We also have offices in South Carolina. I'm here today with my colleague Alyssa Adams, and we have a booth in the back, and we're here with one of our affiliate companies, True, which is basically what I'll call an a la carte HR company, and they are kind of like an outsource. You can kind of outsource your HR needs. But we're here today to kind of discuss accident management, which is a very broad topic. You heard John use the phrases nuclear verdict, increased insurance premiums. And so the goal of our presentation here today is to try and help you guys out to protect your interests, your driver's interests, and limit any exposure that your companies and drivers may face in the aftermath of an accident. So as we work through this program here today, we're going to have an eye towards dealing with adverse bodily injury claims, maybe even large-scale property damage claims, as well as defending a lawsuit that would arise out of one of these accidents. So as we proceed through this morning's, as you can see, trucking and transportation work does something for the balding process. It expedites it. But that was me a couple years ago. And that's my colleague, Alyssa. We'll get back to that slide shortly. But just briefly, so I'm gonna discuss with you accident response, what the driver's role can be in an accident or an accident aftermath, and what the company's role can be as well. We're going to talk about when is the right time to make preventability determinations, and we're also going to discuss the significance of handling your company's driver manuals. So bear with me here, bear with us rather. We're gonna try and cover a lot of material in a really short period of time. And if I go over the time limit, Luke's gonna throw something at me. So forgive me if I speak too fast. But with that being said, if there's any questions that any of you guys have after our presentation is concluded, feel free to track one of us down, stop by our booth, drop us a business card, and we'll be happy to set up some time after today to meet with you and answer any questions you might have. So like I said, this is the why. This is why we're here today, to present to you guys some information to help you guys out and limit your exposure. We want to protect all of your driver's interests, protect your company's interests, help you with an accident investigation, and ultimately, like I said, limit the exposure and keep the meat out of the shark's mouth. And what do I mean by that? The shark. Who's the shark? Those are the pretty faces you see on all the billboards and the fancy commercial ads. Those are the personal injury attorneys. Some of them are my dear friends, but they are our enemies. They are the reasons why we are here today. They are the reasons why your insurance premiums are increasing, okay? So the first and most important part of today and moving forward for you guys as management or owners of companies is to be prepared. It was a motto that I learned in Boy Scouts a very long time ago that reigns true in every facet of life, but most importantly here in this trucking industry. Be prepared. What do I mean by that? It means working with a firm like ours, and I'm not giving ourselves a shameless plug. It's a trucking and commercial transportation law firm that you trust, who can help you guys when it matters most. okay? Great if it was Saxton and Stump, but it's any other law firm you trust. And I'll tell you a little bit later on about why it's important to work with a lawyer or law firm. But when the call comes in, whether it's Saturday morning, Sunday night, before or after business hours, what you don't want to do or be doing is trying to scramble to figure out, who do I need to talk to? What do I need to do when one of our drivers has been wrapped up in a really terrible motor vehicle accident where there's potential fatalities, catastrophic injuries, so on and so forth? You want to have a plan in place as soon as possible if you don't already have that. So for many of our clients who we have the privilege of working with, we have a 24/7 hotline where you can call one of us you call one number, it'll go to an attorney in the middle of the night whenever the call comes in, and we're going to help you and your driver through this situation. Other law firms also have the same concept set up for their companies, but we encourage you guys all to figure this out and have that plan in place. Have that number where you can call. So why get an attorney involved? And I might start from the bottom up here. The attorney-client privilege, ladies and gentlemen, is a very, very powerful tool. And if you haven't had the privilege or misfortune, I should say, of handling or being involved in a catastrophic accident that results in litigation, this is a concept you'll appreciate, learn to appreciate. So how it works is, all too often we see cases that come across our desks, a lawsuit that was served on the company a year or maybe even 2 years after an accident happens. We weren't involved up until that point. And all of you companies, in good faith, we're trying to investigate the accident, document your files, maybe discipline or terminate your drivers, which can be troublesome for us or any lawyer who's going to pick up that file and try to defend it. So what I mean by that is we try to avoid the companies from doing their investigation and taking statements and terminating drivers until the appropriate time. Now, this isn't for every single accident, right? We're talking about accidents where you know there's injuries or there's a pretty good chance there's going to be injuries, right? I'm not talking about where one of your drivers backs into a mailbox or damages a loading dock. I'm not talking about that stuff. This is for injuries or where you know they're going to be injuries or you suspect there will be. So the way the attorney-client privilege works is that instead of your safety director handling this accident from the moment it happens and taking statements from drivers, we handle that. And any communication that comes from your driver to us as the attorney then becomes privileged. Why is that important? Because what happens is if the company does it on their own, these statements or summaries of statements that the driver gave you as to what happened in the accident become discoverable later on in the litigation. And you have to produce that and turn it over. And oftentimes those statements are inconsistent, say, with what that driver may have provided to law enforcement, at the accident scene. It may be inconsistent with what we discover in our accident investigation. Right? In today's day and age, there's cameras everywhere, right? People don't even want to help you. They want to film stuff first. Everybody has Ring doorbells. There's surveillance cameras everywhere. And I'm just giving you a couple examples. But this is why we get involved. We work with the driver. We protect him or her in a very chaotic, stressful time. And we prepare a report after our investigation has been concluded, and we send it off to the companies. That report is also protected. That cannot be obtained by the personal injury attorneys, the sharks, later on and used against us. We help the driver. How do we help the driver? We walk him or her through what I said is a very chaotic, stressful, and challenging time for him or her. We ask them to keep their mouths closed. Only speak to us. Sorry, state troopers, I know that you guys want to investigate these accidents and complete your accident reports, but sometimes we have to realize that there's potential for criminal implications in an accident, right? If there's a fatality involved, he or she could be on the hook for criminal actions, criminal charges, vehicular homicide. And what happens inevitably after every accident is law enforcement come up to the truck or the driver while he or she is not in the right frame of mind, and they're asking what happened. Sometimes you know, and sometimes you don't know. But remember, the implications of what you provide to law enforcement could land your rear end in jail. So what we do is we ask respectfully the driver, say, look, to the police officers and state troopers, we want to cooperate and we're going to cooperate, but now is not the right time to be telling you what happened, because sometimes I don't know what happened. But that's why we help the driver. We search through cameras if we need to, or local surveillance. We get investigators involved if we need to. We interview potential witnesses to see what they saw, find out what they saw. We want to provide law enforcement with a very well-informed statement. We will cooperate. We're not playing hardball. We're just protecting your interests and your driver's interests. And as I said, we will, we help gather evidence at the scene, right? Think of this accident scene as a crime scene. Once you start moving vehicles and cleaning up the debris and everything else, the accident scene's gone. The evidence is gone. And unless you have memorialized it or captured it somehow, it's gone. So obviously the key to any of this is the driver's safety, right? If he or she is injured, we want to make sure they get the right help. And then they don't have to do anything else at the accident scene other than take care of themselves. But to the extent that they are able to help us out and help you guys out and help themselves out, we ask them to be the boots on the ground and start with the investigation at an early point, right? Everybody has a cell phone. Most people have cell phones with video and photographing capability. So before the vehicles are moved and the debris is cleaned up, just scan. Just scan. I want to see debris fields. I want to see fluid leaks. I want to see where the vehicles are located in reference to a guardrail or a tree or anything relevant, right? And we walk the driver through it. We ask them to obtain information about the parties involved, the other parties, right? It'll be in the police report, but we want to get it quick. We want to get it quicker than state police or the local municipal officers get out their police report. Why? Because all too often, our clients end up being sued in what has been perennially termed the judicial hellhole in Pennsylvania, actually in the nation, and that's Philadelphia County. For those of you who have been involved in litigation, you don't want to be there, because the value of all of your cases in that jurisdiction are sometimes tenfold what they could be, for example, say in a Lebanon County or one of these more rural counties where we might have an opportunity to litigate. And so when we find out who these people are that are involved, what we can do is two things. One, we have the opportunity, if we think there's going to be liability against the driver of the company, we get to the person who you may have injured before they get to the lawyer's office. That's critical. Time is of the essence. And therefore, you don't have to spend all this money and stress and heartache trying to figure out and the waiting game, right? We take the fight to them. We get the answer. We get the try and get the case resolved before they can get to a lawyer and make everything worse and more expensive. Beyond that, we also have the opportunity to beat them to the courthouse, to keep the case out of Philadelphia County. What do I mean by that? Well, oftentimes accidents are not just a slam dunk in terms of liability. If liability is questionable and you have sustained inevitably what would be a property damage claim, maybe even a cargo damage claim, well, guess what? You have rights to sue as well. So what we would do in that situation is we would file a claim first in the more favorable county to establish jurisdiction there. That's critical. We get there first before the Sharks file in Philadelphia County. So I got off course there a little bit, but beyond that, beyond helping the driver, helping him or her investigate the accident while they're on the ground there, we help him or her determine whether or not they need to go for post-accident drug and alcohol testing. And that's a whole other issue. For drivers who are subject to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, there's a very limited set of facts where you have to get your drug and alcohol screen. Obviously, your company policies could dictate something stricter where you have to get tested after every accident, not something we recommend. But we help that driver get to the drug and alcohol testing sites in the appropriate time because there are time limitations. And then after the date of the accident, we stay in constant contact with that driver to make sure he or she gets the appropriate care that they need, to make sure they're not posting anything on social media, they're not speaking to anyone about this accident, because what we want to limit is inconsistent statements. I want this statement. And when we're ready, we're going to give the statements to the state police or investigating law enforcement agency. Less statements out there, the better. I'm going to hand it off to my colleague. Oh, excuse me. One other thing before I leave you. A very important thing to realize here is what happens after an accident, what a driver does, how he or she acts is so critical. What people don't realize is that law enforcement, they have a job to do. They're going to ask questions. They're going to ask uncomfortable questions. Be polite. Be professional. Be courteous. It's going to get you a really long way. Okay? Help them do their job. We're not preventing them from doing their job by not answering their questions in terms of what's happening. I told you we're going to cooperate. But if they ask you for information, your license, your registration, all that stuff, trip documentation, be cooperative and provide that. Don't be rude. And this goes out to the other parties who are involved in the accidents, right? The drivers are gonna be frustrated, upset, particularly when the accident's not their fault, because they know the ramifications of having an accident on their record that could potentially be deemed to be preventable, right? And that could cause them to be, argumentative at the scene with the other parties who are involved who may have caused it in their mind. There's no room for that. That doesn't help anybody. It only hurts. And like I said, if you act like a jerk, it's going to come back to haunt you later on. I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Alyssa, and I'll be back in a little bit. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alyssa Adams, and if you don't know me, I've been in the trucking industry for approximately 15 years, dealing with accident response and helping you handle your claims. So I'm going to give you some tips today about accident response for the companies. So some of this is going to overlap with what Lane said, but essentially my first tip is you want to act fast. You want to and be prepared. Like Lane said, when this call comes in about an accident at 2 in the morning, you don't want to be scrambling at that point. You want to have a plan in place And so you can just react and know exactly what to do. This includes training your dispatchers on what questions to ask, what information to obtain from the drivers, and also who to contact when the accident happens. And you want to do all this fast so you can collect all the evidence and have it ahead of time. You don't want to get into a situation, because we've had companies that contact us when a lawsuit, like when they get the lawsuit. You want to have all that information ahead of time, be prepared, potentially try to resolve it before it gets to the lawsuit stage. So, be proactive. And I'm going to kind of give an example of, we have the accident response hotline, but also we have a company that has with us, one of our clients. They call us anytime they have an accident involving another vehicle, no matter how serious. And it's kind of a good, you don't have to necessarily do that. We can tailor plans to you, but it's kind of a good example. So what happens is, and I'm going to go to the next slide here. But basically, does this work? Okay, so the next tip is don't take statements from your drivers. So you can get information from them, but you don't want them to give a written or recorded statement. Like Lane was saying, you don't want multiple statements out there. And the other thing is, when they give a statement, and if this resolves if this comes to a lawsuit, basically what's going to happen, it's going to be 2 years down the road. And at that point, the driver may not remember everything exactly the same way. So for an example, he may not remember the exact time. They're going to use those differences in the driver's statement, how little they may be, like with a time difference, and they're going to use that to say that this driver's not credible and that their statement's not credible. So you don't want all these statements out there just for that reason. So what you can do is, and what our one client, the example I'm using, they have us call the drivers every time. Then it's under attorney-client privilege. So, we can get a kind of a statement from the driver. I talk to the driver, it's all protected, and then I'll report back to the companies and let them kind of know what the driver said. But at that point, once we become involved and my name's on it, it's all protected by attorney-client privilege. So at that point, that's not discoverable anymore. And any information you get cannot be received by the other party. So the next tip is to contact outside help. To bring in outside help, and basically, have a plan in place ahead of time of who to call. So, so my client, for example, that we have the plan in place with, they always call an independent adjuster to, depending on how serious the accident is, they'll go out and have the adjuster, they'll always have them talk to the other drivers and witnesses, get statements from them. Also canvass the scene for security cameras. So like Lane was saying, there's always cameras nearby. Ring cameras can be really helpful in picking up accidents if they're in a residential area. Also, security cameras at like any stores that are nearby. Gas stations always have security cameras, fast food restaurants, and also traffic cameras. So like, for example, PennDOT has a lot of traffic cameras. You can obtain that information, and sometimes that will show the accident. I always, when I talk to drivers, I ask them if they know if there are any cameras in the vicinity so that we can send an investigator out. And the independent adjuster can also take pictures of the scene and of the other vehicles as well. In real serious accidents, we'll send out an accident reconstructionist. They can go out to the scene, do an inspection of the vehicles to try to determine how the accident happened. And that can be also helpful. They can do a download of the vehicle as well. And this it can be helpful, especially lately in rear end accidents, to determine the speed of vehicles. That can be, like, anytime speed's a real factor, the download can sometimes show the speed or if there was a hard brake. And also get an attorney involved for attorney-client privilege. That way the information's not discoverable. And it doesn't have to be us, but we have a team of attorneys that can be helpful if you're interested. My next tip is social media. So if we have I don't do this every time there's an accident, but if there's a serious accident, the first thing I'll do is go on social media, look for articles and postings about the accident. Sometimes in that, from that, you can find out a lot of information. You can find out information on the injured person, anything that happened. Sometimes comments on the articles will tell you that this is a bad intersection or a bad area. And then I'll look for the other driver's page. Sometimes they'll post about the accident, and also family members. So. And it's very important to get on social media right away, because what happens is if the driver gets an attorney, their attorney's going to tell them not to post on social media. The one thing, though, is that they don't talk to their family members. So sometimes the plaintiff's mom may post information. It can be helpful to show that they're not injured or information about the accident. And I have some examples here. So I had an accident where a driver just posted some pictures, and he said, I was in a minor fender bender today. Well, 2 years later, when he filed the lawsuit, he claimed it was this very serious accident. So I was able to depose him and say, well, you posted on Facebook the day of the accident and said I was in a minor fender bender. And that same driver posted a picture of himself in a neck brace at the hospital, and people were very worried. But he posted, I was in a car accident, I'm all good. I took that picture as a joke while I was at the hospital. So I was able to use this picture to say, look, he was joking around. He put this neck brace on as a joke. He wasn't really injured. Also, you can find pictures of people parasailing or doing all sorts of activities that they claim they can't do. This includes, we had an older gentleman that his daughter had posted pictures of him at the gym boxing and, doing handstands. I mean, this guy was in his 60s. I mean, that's pretty impressive, and he's claiming he's extremely injured. So we were able to use this to help us. And you have to act fast on this, because this information may be deleted. And then preservation of evidence. So you may get a evidence preservation letter from the other attorney. So you want to make sure to preserve anything that's in that letter. Also, you want to make sure to preserve your driver's logs after an accident. Make sure you keep the day of the accident and the 7 days prior to the accident. Preserve any dash cam videos or videos that you may have. And then one thing, if you have an attorney on board, they can respond to the preservation letter with their own preservation letter. So I'll send out a letter saying, I want the plaintiff to preserve all these things as well. And so like I was saying, it's very important to have an accident response plan in place. And you want to, and we have some forms that we can send you to help with that. If you give me your business card or give Lane your business card after the speech or stop at our table, we can email you our dispatcher checklist. We have a photo checklist. We have accident forms that you can use. And also you can talk to Lane and I about setting up an accident plan. I think the most important thing is to have a plan in place so you know how you're going to respond. And then I'm also going to talk about the preventability determination. So you want to be careful if you're going to make preventability determinations to make sure everything's investigated beforehand, that you don't make them too prematurely or make unnecessary preventability determinations. You don't want to make these determinations in writing, because the first thing they're going to ask for is the driver's qualification file, and it's going to be in there in writing. And just because an accident's preventable doesn't mean that liability is still not in question. And at that point, if you made a preventability determination, they're going to use that against you later. So don't make it in writing. Obviously, if you have to do it for your internal processes, make sure there's a full investigation, and that you wait until all the investigation has been completed. So Lane's going to come back up here and talk about the driver manuals. Thank you, everyone.
Luke, I'm sorry, we're running over our allotted time, so I'm going to do this really quick. Driver manuals, really important. I put up their non-CDL and CD versus CDL driver manuals, keep them separate. What it really should say is those drivers who are subject to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations versus those that are not, they should have their own separate manuals, for obvious reasons, and we can talk about that another time because I'm on the clock. When you have these driver manuals, you have to understand that this acts as another set of rules that you need to follow. So for those of you who are subject to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, that's your first set. You then have to comply with that state's vehicle code. That's your second set. And then your third set is your internal policies and procedures. And if you're not in compliance with each and every one of those large sets of rules and regulations, these sharks are going to take it to you. They're going to stick it to you. Even in cases where you think you have a good shot on liability, they're going to use this to extract, I'll even go as far as to say, extort a settlement out of you. When I say less is more in terms of your manuals, I really mean that. Because, like I said, you want a simple set of policies and procedures to be able to comply with, right? Less is more. Because inevitably, when you have the more policies and procedures you have in place, the more likely it is that you're not going to be compliant. And the more likely it is you're going to expose yourself unintentionally. You also have to make sure that each one of your drivers reviews it, has the opportunity to ask questions about it, and signs off on that. That's important. Don't just hand the driver the manual and stick it somewhere. Have them sign off and keep that in the DQ file. And then lastly, we ask that you update them regularly. Things change over time, regulations, so on and so forth. Make sure you are updating this document regularly. All too often, we see manuals that come in, they're several hundred pages long. Nobody's looked at it in a decade or more. And nobody has any idea what it says in there. Bad luck. Shameless plug for Saxton and Stump. We are happy to help you out with those manuals. We have a team in place to help with that. And finally, that was a card that if you have the privilege of working with us, we give your drivers cards to keep in their cabs so that when the call has to be made, that's a 24/7 immediate response line. With that, Luke is really angry with me. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.